She became beautiful, but not for me. The truth about my wife's affair after 20 years of marriage, true story of lies and redemption. After 20 years of marriage, I thought I knew my wife better than anyone. We'd built a quiet life together, kids, bills, routines. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Then, one day, a friend saw her and said, "It's strange. I never realized how beautiful she is." And that's when I noticed it too. The new clothes, the silver hair that shimmered like light, the perfume, the late nights, the secrets. I thought she was finding herself, but she was finding someone else. I'm Tom, 45. My wife is and 44. We've been married 20 years, 2 sons in college, a mortgage that finally stopped scaring us, and a life built mostly on carpool schedules and casseroles. We didn't marry for romance. We married because she was pregnant and we were stubborn. She's always been small and practical, short hair, no-nonsense sneakers, the kind of person who packs extra tissues and never forgets birthdays. An elementary school teacher who lived on coffee and compassion. Here's the plot twist. Last fall, my best friend Eric, 45, saw and at a neighborhood fundraiser, did a double take and said, "Man, it's strange I never noticed her before, but she's a beauty." I laughed, then actually looked at her. Really looked, for the first time in a long time. The gray in her hair had turned silver and glossy, like someone painted light on each strand. She wore a silk blouse I'd never seen, simple earrings catching the chandelier glow. She looked different, elegant, like herself, but edited. Our life had been a long hallway of emergencies. Complicated first pregnancy, her mom's illness, our second son's arrival, then her dad's decline, and ran on empty for years, grading papers at 11 p.m., falling asleep in hoodies. Somewhere between the funerals and the tuition bills, our marriage turned into quiet logistics. I told myself that was maturity. After the boys moved out and her parents passed and started changing, she took up jogging at 6 a.m., switched from grocery store shampoo to something in a glass bottle, started reading poetry again. She joined an art integration committee at school and stayed later. When I reached for her in bed, she'd kiss my cheek, polite, distant, and turn over with a whispered tomorrow. Small things piled up. A new perfume that smelled like orange peel and rain, a silver bracelet I didn't buy, an unlocked phone that suddenly learned a passcode. I told myself not to be the jealous husband stereotype. She'd earned a little shine after all those years of exhaustion. Then one night, while we cleaned up after dinner, she hummed a tune I didn't recognize and spun a tea towel like a ribbon. The towel slipped, and her blouse gaped just enough for me to see a faint smudge of shimmer at the top of her chest, like someone had traced a line with warm sugar. Nothing indecent, just intentional. I felt ridiculous for noticing. But once you see that kind of detail, your brain doesn't unsee it. "Conference this weekend," she said, too brightly. "Art and literacy." "Where?" I asked. "Downtown," she said, eyes sliding past mine. "You wouldn't like it. Lots of curriculum talk." It was the way she avoided my gaze that snagged me. Not guilt, practice. Like she'd rehearsed sounding casual. I wish I could say I confronted her then. Instead, I washed plates, nodded like a fool, and told myself love means trusting. But it also means paying attention. And for the first time in years, I did. That weekend, while she was at her so-called conference, I tried not to spiral. I watched old movies, ordered takeout, told myself to relax. But by Sunday night, she still wasn't home. She texted around 9 p.m., staying to help with cleanup. "Long day. Love you." I almost believed her. Almost. The next morning, when I was leaving for work, I noticed something on the kitchen counter. A small black notebook, the kind she always carried for lesson plans. I wasn't proud of what I did, but curiosity had teeth. I opened it. Most of it was mundane. Grocery lists, teaching notes, half-finished quotes about finding joy in simplicity. Then I turned the page. There were fragments of poetry, but not her usual soft stuff about children or nature. These were intimate, adult. A few sentences that made me feel like I was reading something private. "He sees me differently. Like I'm still worth looking at." Below that, a name written over and over, Mark. I recognized it. Mark was the young art teacher she'd mentioned from school. Late 20s, divorced, charming in that creative way that makes middle-aged teachers feel alive again. My stomach dropped. I flipped through more pages, sketches of hands, initials tucked into corners. It was subtle, like someone confessing in code. But it was there. That night, I waited up. She came home around 10, hair loose, cheeks flushed. "Good conference?" I asked. She smiled. "Tiring. My brain's fried." I watched her pull her earrings off, one by one. "Who's Mark?" Her hand froze midair. Then, a small laugh. "The art guy? Why? You write his name in your notebook." She blinked, surprised but composed. "You read my notebook?" "You left it on the counter," I said. Her face changed, anger replacing fear. "That's private, Tom. They're just notes for a project." "What project includes poetry about someone who sees you differently?" She rolled her eyes. "You're unbelievable. You can't stand that I have something of my own now. Do you know how long I've felt invisible in this house?" I stood there, stunned. "I work. I provide. I've been here every day." "Physically, sure," she snapped. "But you stopped seeing me years ago." That was her first lie wrapped in truth. I knew I'd stopped noticing details, but not her. Never her. I didn't yell. I just said quietly, "Then maybe I should start." She hesitated, eyes softening. "You're overthinking, Tom. It's harmless." Then she kissed my cheek, warm and perfunctory, and went to bed. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, the notebook beside my coffee cup. One page, near the end, had a small heart drawn next to the initials M+A. I stared at it until the ink blurred. Harmless? No, nothing about that looked harmless. A week went by. She acted normal, smiling, busy, humming as she packed her lunch. But I started noticing new things. The extra perfume before work, a pair of heels she hadn't worn in years, the small silver earrings shaped like leaves. She'd started dressing for someone, just not me. On Wednesday afternoon, I decided to drive by the school after work. I told myself it was paranoia, that I just needed to see her car and go home. When I pulled into the parking lot, I spotted it right away, her old blue hatchback. She was supposed to be done an hour ago, but her classroom lights were still on. I walked through the side entrance. The hallways were quiet, that strange echo schools have after hours. When I reached her room, I saw her through the small window in the door. She was laughing, head tilted, hand brushing against someone's arm. It was him, Mark. They were standing too close. He said something, and she touched his sleeve, a small, familiar touch that used to belong to me. I didn't burst in. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at the two of them framed by the soft classroom light, surrounded by children's art. Her world, her secret life. When she finally got home that evening, she acted casual, dropping her bag by the door. "Traffic was insane," she said, pulling off her shoes. "Yeah," I said. "You and Mark must have had a lot to talk about while you waited." Her head snapped up. "Excuse me. You were at school late. I saw you." She froze for a second, then scoffed. "You followed me? That's creepy, Tom." "I drove by," I said. "You were with him." Her tone sharpened. "He was helping me clean up the art room. You know, because that's his job." "Looked like you were having fun." She threw her hands up. "Oh, so I'm not allowed to smile now? God forbid I have a normal conversation with a coworker." "Normal," I said quietly. "You were touching him." She blinked, caught off guard. "You're insane." I brushed his sleeve. "That's it." "You're lying." Her jaw clenched. "You're imagining things." This is what happens when husbands stop trusting their wives. They start inventing stories. I leaned forward, calm but cold. "You're a terrible liar," and her voice dropped. "And you're a terrible husband." That one landed. I didn't respond. I just walked out to the porch. She followed, still angry, still talking, saying things like "you never appreciated me, and I deserve to feel alive." I waited for her to stop. Then I said, "Do you love him?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then, too fast, she said, "Of course not." That was when I knew. The lie came too easily. She went back inside and slammed the door. I stayed outside in the cold for an hour, staring at the dark street, wondering how a woman who once smelled like chalk and apples could suddenly smell like someone else's perfume. And somewhere deep down, I already knew this wasn't a one-time thing. It had been happening for a while. I just hadn't wanted to see it, until it was too late. The next morning, Em was up early, humming while she packed her lunch. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened the night before, like she hadn't called me a terrible husband or lied right to my face. I almost admired how calm she was. Almost. When she left, I sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone on the counter. She'd forgotten it. I picked it up and felt my heart hammering against my ribs. I told myself I'd just check, get proof, see what I already knew. Her password didn't work until I remembered her father's birthday. It opened immediately. There it was. Messages from M. They weren't graphic, not exactly, but they were intimate in ways that cut deeper. I keep thinking about your hair in the sunlight yesterday. You looked amazing in that blue blouse. You make Mondays bearable. And then hers. You make me feel young again. We can't keep doing this. I feel guilty. I'll call you later. The timestamps ran back months. Long enough that guilt had stopped her, but not long enough for her to stop replying. I didn't throw the phone or scream. I took photos of the messages, emailed them to myself, and set the phone exactly where she'd left it. That evening, she came home, smiled, poured wine. You're quiet, she said. I'm thinking, I replied. About what? About how long you've been sleeping with Mark. Her smile died instantly. What? Don't, I said. I saw the messages. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then, as if remembering a script, she said, You went through my phone? That's a violation, Tom. You're worried about privacy? I asked quietly. That's rich. Her voice rose. We're just friends. He's been going through a divorce. I was helping him. I interrupted, my voice shaking. He's been helping himself to you. She slammed her wine glass down, red spilling like blood across the counter. You think you're perfect? You think you didn't drive me to this? You made me feel small for years. I made you safe, I said. I gave you everything I had. She went from anger to tears so fast it felt rehearsed. She sank to her knees, clutching my hand. Please, Tom, I made a mistake. It was just once. I swear it's over. I didn't pull away. When was once, Anne? She hesitated. Too long. Last month. I shook my head. Try again. She crumpled. It started in February. But it didn't mean anything. I didn't even want it. He just made me feel noticed. And that was enough? She nodded through tears. You stopped seeing me. That one hurt because, in a small way, it was true. I had stopped looking closely. But what she'd done went beyond being unseen. It was deliberate. She sobbed harder, saying she'd do anything, that she'd cut him off, go to counseling, confess to the boys. I let her cry. I didn't yell or touch her. I just said, You already confessed, Anne. To him. I was just the last to know. Then I walked upstairs, leaving her on the kitchen floor. That night, I heard her crying through the walls. But the only thing I felt was relief, because finally, I didn't have to keep pretending our marriage was still real. The next few days were a blur of politeness that felt worse than shouting. We moved around each other like strangers renting the same house. She kept trying to fix things in small ways, folding my laundry, cooking my favorite meals, leaving notes that said, Please talk to me. I didn't. Every time I looked at her, I saw those messages. The, You make me feel young again, looped in my head until I hated the sound of her voice. On Wednesday, she called out sick from work. When I came home, she was sitting on the couch in sweatpants, eyes red, a mug of cold tea in her hands. I told him it's over, she said before I could even put my keys down. Good for him, I said. Her voice wavered. For us. I did it for us. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the same woman who'd once fallen asleep on lesson plans, who'd stood beside me at funerals, who'd raised our boys with grit and grace. And now, she was reduced to this. Guilt trying to masquerade as love. I said quietly, Do you even know why you're sorry? She hesitated. Because I hurt you. No, I said. You're sorry you got caught. Her chin trembled. You can't forgive me? Forgive you for what? For feeling lonely? Maybe. For lying about it for months? No. She started crying again, louder this time, clutching at my arm like I was the last rope on a cliff. Please, Tom. We can fix this. Therapy, anything. Don't throw away 20 years for a mistake. I pulled my arm free. You threw it away when you let him touch you. That shut her up. She just sat there, sobbing into her hands. That night, she texted both our sons. Mom's having a hard week. Please call me. I didn't stop her. Let her explain whatever version of the truth she needed to. When I told my parents, my mother said softly, and always seemed restless, I thought it was just the empty nest. My father was blunt. You gave her comfort. Some people get bored of comfort. Her side of the family was worse. Her mother, Evelyn, called me 2 days later. You can't just abandon her, she snapped. She's been through so much. Men make mistakes all the time. and their wives forgive them. I'm not your husband, I said, and hung up. The next evening, Anne packed a bag and went to stay with her sister. Before she left, she stood by the door and said, "You're not even going to fight for me?" I looked at her, tired. I already did. For 20 years. She left without another word. The house went quiet in a way I'd never heard before. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room, it fills you. And for the first time, I realized that the hardest part of betrayal isn't losing the person. It's realizing how easy it was for them to risk losing you. After she left, I thought the silence would be peaceful. It wasn't. It was heavy, the kind that made every creak sound like a memory. I still caught myself expecting her voice. "Tom, can you grab the salt?" Or, "Did you feed the cat?" And each time, it stung that she wasn't there, followed by the worst thought. She had chosen not to be. The boys came home for the weekend. I'd told them enough to be honest without tearing their mother apart. "Your mom and I are taking a break," I said at dinner. "We've had some problems." Miles, the younger one, frowned. "Like fighting?" "Something like that," I said. My oldest, Evan, watched me quietly. He's always been observant, my mirror in personality. "She cheated, didn't she?" he asked flatly. I froze. And had told them nothing. I was sure of it. "Where did you hear that?" "She called me crying 2 nights ago," he said. Didn't say much, but I know that sound. I didn't confirm or deny it. I just said, "She's going through something. I am too." Later, Evan found me on the porch. "You don't have to protect her, Dad," he said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." That hit harder than anything Anne had said. 2 days later, her sister showed up. Rachel, loud, brash, the kind of woman who always made me feel like a background character at my own dinner table. She let herself in without knocking. "Tom," she started, hands on her hips, "Anne's not eating. She's sick over this. She's human, for God's sake." "So am I," I said. She rolled her eyes. "You men love to play the victim. She spent her whole life taking care of you, your kids, your house. And one mistake, one." I cut her off. "Stop calling it one mistake. It was a year of lies." She blinked, thrown off. "A year. Give or take." Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "I didn't know it was that long." "Now you do," I said and walked away. That night, Anne texted me. I heard Rachel came by. I didn't tell her everything. I don't want people to think badly of me. I stared at the message for a long time. Not a word about me, or us, just her image. I replied, "You're still trying to manage the story instead of the damage." She didn't respond. Days passed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I tried to work, but couldn't focus. I'd see flashes of them together, her smile, his hands, and my chest would tighten until I had to get out of the house. So I started driving. No destination, just movement. One evening, I ended up at the coast, parked near the cliffs. The sky was orange and gray, the ocean loud and endless. I stood there until it was dark and thought, if I stay here long enough, maybe the noise will drown her out. It didn't. But it did something else. It gave me a strange, calm realization. I couldn't fix this, or her, or the past 20 years. All I could fix was me. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. After that night by the ocean, I stopped pretending my marriage could be rescued. I woke up the next morning with salt still on my skin and this strange, clean emptiness in my chest, like the part that had been screaming finally ran out of air. When I got home, the house didn't feel like a grave anymore, just a space waiting for something new. I packed up half her things, folded her clothes neatly into boxes, and stacked them by the front door. I wasn't being cruel. I was being done. That afternoon, my father stopped by. He's a man of few words, ex-military, built from silence and discipline. He looked around the half-empty house and said, "You finally did it." "Did what?" "Stop trying to carry everything alone," he said. We sat on the porch for a long time, not talking much. Then he said quietly, "Your mother told me and came to her. Wanted her to convince you to reconcile." I laughed without humor. "Of course she did. She said something that got to me, though," he added. "What's that?" She said, "He's a good man. I just forgot how to love him." I stared out at the yard. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" He shook his head. "No, it's supposed to remind you that forgetting goes both ways." That stuck with me. The next week, I went back to the coast, not to brood this time, but to shoot photos. The way the light moved across the waves was hypnotic. I hadn't used my camera in years, But now I couldn't stop. I spent hours capturing the water, the cliffs, the gulls. Every photo looked like a version of freedom I didn't know how to live yet. Then, by pure coincidence, or fate, I ran into someone. A woman standing near the rocks with a tripod and a lens twice the size of mine. Her name was Claire. Early 40s, journalist, calm voice. We started talking about aperture settings, then light, then everything else. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't volunteer it. There was something gentle about that. Just two people sharing space without the weight of expectation. When I got home that night, there was another message from Anne. I miss you. Please, can we talk? I'm lost without you. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt or anger. Just clarity. I wrote back. You were lost before I left. I just finally stopped following. I set the phone down, opened my laptop, and began editing my photos. I sent one, the best one, a sunrise breaking through fog, to a local art page online. By morning, it had thousands of likes and a message from a small gallery owner asking if I'd be interested in showcasing my work. And just like that, I realized something important. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, one truth, one sunrise at a time. A few months passed. Papers were signed. The house officially became mine, and I moved most of her remaining things to a storage unit. It wasn't bitterness anymore. It was practicality. The ghosts of us had to go somewhere, and a steel door with a padlock felt like the right place. And called occasionally, still trying to sound fragile. How are you eating? Sleeping? The boys told me about your photography. That's wonderful. You'll come around, Tom. I know you will. I didn't. I'd begun spending more time at the coast again, shooting landscapes at sunrise. The light out there felt like forgiveness, cool, new, indifferent to human drama. Claire would sometimes join me. She had this easy way of existing that didn't require conversation. Some mornings we barely spoke, just took photos side by side, two quiet people sharing the same horizon. When the gallery opening came around, I almost didn't go. The thought of standing there while people judged pieces of my pain made me sick. But Claire showed up at my door that night, holding coffee and a soft smile. It's your story, she said. You should be there when it's told. So I went. The place was small, minimalist, the air full of wine and soft jazz. My photos hung on white walls, gray ocean, cracked rocks, sunlight slicing through mist. One image stopped me, the one I'd titled Tide Line. A single footprint leading into the surf. People came up to me, asked questions. One woman said, "Your work feels lonely but not hopeless." I smiled and said, "That's about right." Halfway through the evening, I saw my parents walk in. My mother hugged me, eyes wet. "You look lighter," she said. My father simply nodded at the photos and murmured, "You found a way to turn pain into something useful." Then, as I was talking to the gallery owner, a voice behind me said, "Tom." I turned and stood there. She looked different, slimmer, sharper, dressed in a dark coat. Her hair, once soft gray, was dyed golden again. For a moment, I just stared. "I saw your post online," she said softly. "I wanted to see your work. It's beautiful." "Thank you," I said, keeping my voice even. "You've changed," she continued. "You look happy." "I am." She looked down, twisting her ring finger where her wedding band used to be. "I didn't think you'd actually let go." "I didn't think you'd actually come," I replied. Her eyes glistened. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Tom. I was just too foolish to see it." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, because I didn't need to. The silence between us finally belonged to me. She wiped her eyes, said goodbye, and left. After she walked out, Claire appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of wine. She nodded toward the empty doorway and asked, "You okay?" I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "For the first time, I really am." And as we stood there, watching people admire the photo titled Tide Line, I realized something simple and freeing. The footprints I'd left behind weren't leading back home. They were leading somewhere new. A few weeks after the gallery show, life found a rhythm again. Work, photography, quiet dinners. The boys visited often. The house felt full of laughter again instead of tension. I was learning how to live without waiting for something to break. Then one evening, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten envelope with N's neat cursive on the front. I stared at it for a while before opening it. Inside was a short note. "Tom, I'm leaving town. There's a teaching position in Oregon, near the coast." I thought I'd feel relief, but all I feel is regret. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, not just for what I did, but for who I became. You deserved honesty, and I gave you everything but that. You'll never believe me, but I never stopped caring for you. Take care of yourself, and keep taking those pictures. They're proof that pain can make beauty. And I read it twice. It didn't hurt like I thought it would. I didn't even feel angry. It was just sad. A small, final closing of a chapter that had already ended. That weekend, I took the letter to the coast. It was a cold, windy day, the kind where the sea mist sticks to your face and everything smells like salt and distance. I stood at the edge of the water and let the letter go. The waves pulled it under in seconds. When I turned around, Claire was there, holding 2 coffees. You really came out here just to throw that away? She asked with a small smile. Some things belong to the sea, I said. She laughed quietly. You and your poetic metaphors. We sat on the rocks for a long time, drinking coffee and watching the sky shift from gray to gold. She told me about her next photo assignment, mountains in Colorado, and asked if I wanted to come along. I don't think I've got any reason to stay here, I said. That night, I called my sons. Miles said, Dad, that's awesome. Evan said, you deserve a new start. Before bed, I walked through the house. The walls were still bare where our family photos had hung, but the emptiness didn't bother me anymore. It felt like possibility. I took one last picture from the window, moonlight on the street, quiet and clean. I titled it Closure. When I looked at the photo later, I noticed something I hadn't seen through the lens, my own reflection in the glass, faint but steady. It hit me then. The part of me that had been lost in her, in us, was finally back. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt completely alone and completely okay with it. 6 months later, I was standing in Colorado, camera in hand, staring at a sunrise that looked like it had been painted just for me. The light spilled over the mountains in layers, gold, pink, and the faintest hint of silver, and I thought, and would have loved this. Then, just as quickly, I thought, no, she loved being seen loving things. The difference between the two was peace. Claire and I weren't a love story, not yet. Maybe not ever. But we were something honest, 2 people who didn't need to fill silence with promises. Sometimes we drove for hours without talking, and that quiet felt like healing. My photography had turned into a small business. Magazines, galleries, even one commission from a travel agency that wanted emotion in landscape. I laughed when I read that. Apparently, my heartbreak had become a product. But it paid the bills, and more importantly, it gave me purpose. One weekend, the boys came out to visit. Evan was taller, surer, and Miles had that calm confidence that comes from seeing your parents survive the worst. We went hiking, just the 3 of us. At the summit, Evan said, Mom called. She wanted to know how you were doing. I smiled. You can tell her I'm fine. Should I? He asked. Yeah, I said. Because it's true. That night, sitting by a campfire, Miles asked, Dad, do you ever wish it hadn't happened? I thought for a long time before answering. I used to, but now no. It taught me how strong I actually am. How much of my happiness depends on me. He nodded slowly. That's kind of awesome. The next morning, before they left, I gave each of them one of my framed photos, a sunrise breaking through fog. Hang these wherever life takes you, I said. So you'll remember that light always comes back. After they drove off, I stood there for a while, feeling the wind push through the grass. It smelled like pine and new beginnings. I realized something simple. I wasn't the man who got betrayed anymore. I was the man who learned how to build a life from the ruins of one. Sometimes I still catch glimpses of my old life in dreams. Anne's laughter, the smell of coffee on Sunday mornings, the way she used to hum while folding laundry. But those memories don't hurt now. They're just proof that I lived, that I loved, and that I let go. If anyone reading this has ever been where I was, drowning in someone else's betrayal, here's what I'd tell you. Let it break you, then rebuild. Don't chase closure from the person who hurt you. Create it yourself. Because one day, you'll wake up under a sky so wide and bright you'll barely remember the darkness. And you'll think, just like I did this morning, I made it through. I'm free. I have many other stories. Go to my channel, subscribe so you don't lose us. Give me a thumbs up. I have many other stories. Go to my channel, subscribe so you don't lose us. Give me a thumbs up.